My cheating ex texted, "We just need you at our wedding for closure." 3 years after I caught her with my best friend, I replied, "No thanks," and went back to my life, until mutual friends started asking why my absence terrified them. This is going to sound petty, but I need to know if I'm being reasonable because everyone keeps telling me to just get over it. And honestly, I'm starting to question my own sanity. I'm Nolan, 35, work as a sales director for a logistics company here in Charlotte. 3 years ago, my life imploded in the most professionally embarrassing way possible. I discovered my girlfriend of 14 months, Chloe, and my best friend since college, Hunter, had been conducting a full-blown affair behind my back. Not some drunken mistake, not some emotional affair that got out of hand, but a systematic deception that had been going on for 4 months while we were living together and planning our financial future. The discovery happened on a Tuesday morning when I was helping Chloe prepare for a client presentation. She'd asked me to print some documents from her laptop while she showered. That's when I saw the email thread that wasn't about business at all. Hotel confirmations for weekends when she'd told me she was visiting her sister. Restaurant reservations for 2 during her solo work dinners. And photos, God, the photos. Not just the physical evidence of their betrayal, but pictures of them at places we'd talked about visiting together. Hunter wearing the watch I'd helped him pick out for his promotion celebration. Chloe in the dress she'd bought for our anniversary dinner, except she was wearing it for him. The timeline unraveled in real time as I scrolled through months of messages. 4 months of working late, 4 months of girls' weekends, 4 months of me cooking dinner for one while believing she was building her career. The financial betrayal hit just as hard. She'd been using our joint account to pay for hotel rooms, dinners, even a weekend trip to Asheville that she'd described as a company retreat. I sat in our bedroom, surrounded by the life we'd built together, holding evidence that none of it was real. The joint savings account we'd built to 25Ks, the apartment lease we'd signed together, the integration into each other's families and professional networks, all of it contaminated by systematic lies. When Chloe came out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, asking if I'd gotten the documents printed, I just held up the laptop screen. The look on her face? Not surprise, but resignation. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Nolan, let me explain," she started, but I was already moving. "Here's the thing about discovering betrayal. Your mind shifts into damage control mode immediately. I wasn't thinking about heartbreak or confrontation. I was thinking about extraction. Get out cleanly, minimize the contamination, rebuild from solid ground. I'd learned this approach managing failed projects at work. When something's compromised beyond repair, you don't try to fix it. You cut it out and start fresh. I packed a bag while she stood there wrapped in that towel, trying different approaches. First, minimizing. It just happened. We never meant for it to get serious. Then justification. You've been so focused on work lately, we barely talk anymore. Then promises. I'll end it today. We can work through this. We're stronger than this. But I'd already done the math. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a relationship rough patch. This was 4 months of deliberate choices every single day to prioritize their happiness over my trust. 4 months of looking me in the eye and lying. 4 months of taking my support, emotional, financial, professional, while giving their loyalty to someone else. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was realizing how stupid I'd been. All those nights I'd defended Chloe to my family when they said she seemed distant. All those times I'd covered her share of expenses when she claimed to be short on cash. Money that was apparently going to hotel rooms with Hunter. All those professional connections I'd shared with both of them, thinking I was helping friends advance their careers. Hunter called me that afternoon. I let it ring. Then he texted, "We need to talk, man. This isn't how we wanted you to find out." The audacity of that statement still amazes me. They had a plan for how I should find out about their betrayal. They'd discussed the optimal way to destroy my trust. I blocked his number immediately. I handled the practical matters like a business transaction, removed Chloe from our joint accounts, transferred the lease to her name since she wanted to stay, packed everything that mattered to me. I gave her 48 hours to figure out her finances. Then I was gone. No dramatic confrontations, no demands for explanations, no attempts to fight for something that was already dead. The hardest part was explaining it to people. Chloe and Hunter were integrated into every aspect of my social and professional life in Charlotte. We'd all gone to college together. Hunter had helped me land my current position through his connections. Chloe had become close with my sister Paige. They were supposed to be my wedding party when I eventually proposed. Instead, I had to rebuild everything. New apartment in Myers Park, away from our old haunts in South End. New routines that didn't involve the places we'd frequented together. New professional boundaries that didn't include Hunter's finance network. It was like relocating to a different city while staying in the same town. The construction project began immediately. Strip out the damaged materials. Assess what was still structurally sound. Build back better, stronger, with materials you could actually trust. Some people thought I was being too extreme, cutting off all contact. But when termites have infected the wood, you don't just treat the surface damage. You replace the entire compromised section, or the problem spreads. For 3 years, I stuck to that blueprint. The rebuilding wasn't just about moving on. It was about constructing something better than what I'd lost. I threw myself into work with a focus I'd never had before. Without the distractions of managing someone else's emotional needs or covering their financial shortfalls, my performance skyrocketed. 2 promotions in 3 years. Salary climbing from $95K to $135K. Not because I was running from pain, but because I finally had the bandwidth to focus on what I could control. The house in Myers Park was my biggest statement of independence. A solid brick colonial at $375K, purchased entirely with my own credit, my own down payment, my own vision of what home should look like. No compromises, no joint decisions, no wondering if my partner was secretly planning to share it with someone else. Every room reflected my choices. Every payment came from my labor. Every improvement added value that belonged entirely to me. Dating again took longer than I'd expected. Not because I was hung up on Chloe, but because I'd fundamentally changed how I evaluated people. Trust became something that had to be earned over months, not assumed after a few good dates. I started seeing Jessie Hamilton about 8 months ago, a freelance consultant who understood professional demands and had her own reasons for being cautious about mixing business with pleasure. She'd been burned by a business partner who'd stolen clients in a significant contract. We bonded over the experience of rebuilding after betrayal, though hers was purely professional. The no-contact strategy wasn't about being dramatic or nursing grudges. It was about protecting what I'd built. Charlotte's business community is smaller than people realize, especially in logistics and supply chain management. Hunter and I moved in similar circles, attended the same industry events, knew the same vendors and clients. But I'd restructured my professional network to minimize overlap, choosing conferences in other cities, cultivating relationships with companies that didn't work with his firm. It was working. My reputation was solid. My relationships were authentic. My life was exactly what I designed it to be. I wasn't angry at Chloe and Hunter anymore. Anger requires caring, and I genuinely stopped caring about them as people. They'd become cautionary tales I occasionally shared with friends, nothing more. Which made last Tuesday's text all the more jarring. Hi Nolan, I hope you're doing well. I know it's been a long time since we've spoken, but Hunter and I are getting married in 6 weeks at Foundation for the Carolinas. We've both grown so much over these past 3 years, and we've realized how important healing and closure are for everyone involved. We would really love to have you there to celebrate with us. I know what we did was wrong, but we've built something beautiful together, and having you there would mean everything to us. It would show that we can all move forward as mature adults who have learned from their mistakes. I understand if you need time to think about it, but please consider it. We miss having you in our lives. I read it 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of manipulation disguised as emotional growth. The therapy speak was thick, healing, closure, mature adults. But the underlying message was clear. We need you to validate our choices so we can feel better about how we started. My response was simple. No thanks. Best of luck with everything. But apparently, that wasn't the end of it. 2 days later, another message arrived, longer this time. I can understand if you're still hurt, but holding on to anger for 3 years isn't healthy for anyone. We've done the work in therapy to understand how our choices affected you, and we want to make amends. This wedding represents a new chapter for all of us, and your presence would help us all heal and move forward. Hunter feels terrible about how everything happened, and seeing you happy for us would mean he could finally forgive himself. We're not asking you to forget what happened, just to show that you've grown past it. The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted me there so Hunter could finally forgive himself. My job apparently was to provide absolution for their guilt by demonstrating that their betrayal hadn't caused lasting damage. Show up, smile, congratulate them on the relationship that began with systematic lies, and help them rewrite history as a story where everyone wins. I didn't respond to the second message, but my silence apparently wasn't acceptable. Within a week, mutual friends started reaching out. Brett from our regional office called, saying Chloe had contacted him, worried about my emotional state and whether I was struggling with unresolved anger. The concern trolling was masterful, positioned my boundaries as evidence of psychological problems that needed intervention. Then Zach from our old college group forwarded me a message Chloe had sent him. I'm really worried about Nolan. It's been 3 years, and he still won't even consider healing this relationship. I think he might be stuck in a pattern of resentment that's preventing him from moving forward in his life. Could you maybe check on him? I just want to know he's okay. The narrative was clear. Nolan is damaged goods, unable to process normal relationship conflicts, stuck in unhealthy patterns while we've grown and thrived. My success, my new relationship, my rebuilt life, none of that mattered if I wouldn't perform forgiveness on command. That's when I started asking questions. Casual inquiries to mutual friends about how Chloe and Hunter were really doing. The picture that emerged was fascinating. They'd broken up twice in the past 3 years, once for 6 months, once for 2. Their engagement had happened only 4 months ago, right after completing couples therapy, because Chloe was having doubts about their compatibility. The beautiful, stable relationship they wanted me to celebrate was apparently held together with professional counseling and repeated reconciliations. Suddenly, their desperation for my attendance made perfect sense. My friend Zach put it perfectly when I finally shared what I'd learned about their relationship history. They want you there because seeing you happy for them would prove they made the right choice. Your absence confirms they destroyed something solid for something that barely works. That hit me hard because it was exactly right. Chloe and Hunter knew their relationship was built on compromised ground. Every fight they had, every time they broke up, every session of couples therapy was a reminder that they'd started by betraying someone who'd trusted them both completely. They couldn't escape the fact that their love story began with systematic deception and financial theft. Having me at their wedding, networking professionally, congratulating them, playing the role of the gracious ex who'd moved on would let them rewrite that narrative entirely. Instead of, we betrayed Nolan and destroyed our professional relationships, it would become, everyone supports us now, even Nolan. My presence would be proof that their choices hadn't caused lasting damage, that the betrayal was a minor bump in the road rather than a fundamental character revelation. My absence, on the other hand, was a permanent reminder that their relationship had real costs. Every empty chair in that venue would represent someone whose trust they'd compromised. Every guest who asked, "Where's Nolan? I thought you all worked together," would force them to either lie or acknowledge that their success story had some ugly chapters. I had coffee with my sister Paige to get an outside perspective. Paige is a nurse practitioner, extremely practical, usually the first person to tell me when I'm overthinking professional situations. Her take was illuminating. They're asking you to do emotional labor for them, Nolan. They want you to manage their guilt so they can enjoy their wedding without confronting what they actually did. That's not your job. She was right, but Paige also presented the counter-argument. If you're genuinely over it, what's the harm in a few hours of networking? Showing up might actually prove that you're confident enough in your own success, that being around them doesn't affect you professionally. I couldn't answer that immediately, but I'd been thinking about it for days. The idea bothered me on a level that had nothing to do with lingering feelings. It wasn't that I couldn't handle being around them. I probably could. The issue was that attending would be participating in a lie. They wanted me there as evidence that what they'd done wasn't that destructive, that the damage was minimal, that everyone had moved on and thrived. But that wasn't true. What they'd done was destructive. The damage was significant. I didn't move on. I had to completely rebuild my social circle, my ability to trust professional partnerships, my entire approach to integrating personal and business relationships. And while everything worked out eventually, it worked out because I cut them out entirely, not because I forgave them. My presence would give them permission to tell a story about their relationship. that erased the real cost of how it started. I wasn't willing to do that. Then I discovered something that changed everything. Through Paige's network, I learned what Chloe had been telling people in our shared professional circles about our breakup. Her sister works in healthcare administration and had mentioned the wedding situation to Paige at a recent conference, along with some interesting context about how Chloe had been framing our relationship's end. According to Chloe's version of events, I'd never really committed to our relationship and had moved on immediately, which downplayed the impact of her choices entirely. She'd been telling people that I was already emotionally checked out, focused entirely on my career, which was why she'd found connection with Hunter. The breakup was mutual and drama-free, just two people who'd grown in different directions. The problem with that story was that several people in Charlotte's business community remembered how things actually went down. They remembered me taking time off work, looking like I'd been hit by a truck. They remembered me disappearing from industry networking events for 6 months. They remembered the obvious fact that I'd been professionally and personally devastated. So, Chloe's revisionist history wasn't landing the way she wanted it to. People knew she was lying, which actually made her look worse professionally. But here's where it got pathetic. Having me at the wedding would allow her to point to me and say, "See, even Nolan supports our partnership now. He's moved on and he's happy for our success." My absence, meanwhile, was a constant reminder that their relationship began with betrayal. Every person who asked why I wasn't there forced uncomfortable explanations about growing apart, that everyone recognized as corporate speak for something bad happened here. The sister also revealed that Chloe was genuinely anxious about the wedding, not normal bride nerves, but actual anxiety about whether people would judge them, whether their professional relationships could survive the scrutiny. She kept saying she wanted everyone to celebrate their success, but she was clearly scared that people would be thinking about the compromise beginning instead of focusing on where they were now. Hunter, meanwhile, had been working his own angle with our mutual professional contacts. He'd been playing the networking card, asking people to help repair our business relationship, because professional networks are more important than personal drama. The irony was stunning. He'd destroyed our 10-year professional partnership for personal satisfaction. And now he wanted me to prioritize that same network over my boundaries because it was convenient for him. When Zach told him that I'd been clear about my boundaries for 3 years and wasn't interested in changing course, Hunter's response was telling. He's letting pride get in the way of good business. As if my refusal to absolve his guilt was a character flaw rather than a reasonable consequence of his choices. But the final piece of manipulation sealed my decision completely. Through the same network, I learned that Chloe had been telling people that if I didn't attend, it would prove I was still professionally threatened by their success, that my absence was evidence I hadn't really moved on career-wise. The manipulation in that statement was breathtaking. Show up to validate their choices, or don't show up and have her tell people it's because I'm still professionally insecure about their advancement. That's when I realized this wasn't about closure or healing or any of the corporate therapy speak she'd been using. This was about narrative control. She wanted to control the story about what happened between us professionally, and she needed my participation to make her preferred version stick. Well, here's the thing about rebuilding after structural damage. Sometimes you have to let a compromised building collapse instead of trying to prop up something that was built wrong from the start. I wasn't going to help them feel better about their choices. I wasn't going to validate their relationship by pretending it didn't begin with systematic betrayal. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let Chloe weaponize my absence as proof of professional insecurity. Instead, I had a different strategy entirely. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at Foundation for the Carolinas, a $32K celebration with 120 guests from Charlotte's business and social communities. I didn't attend, obviously, but I didn't just sit at home wondering what was happening either. I had a plan that would demonstrate exactly how professionally threatened I was by their success. Saturday morning, 2 hours before their ceremony, I announced on LinkedIn that I'd been promoted to senior sales director and had just closed a $2.2 million contract with a major regional distributor, the largest deal our company had landed in 5 years. The timing was perfect. Everyone in Charlotte's logistics community saw it, including dozens of people who were getting ready for Chloe and Hunter's wedding. The post gained traction immediately. Congratulations poured in from colleagues, clients, competitors. Industry contacts I hadn't spoken to in months were commenting and sharing. The professional validation was genuine. This was a career milestone I'd earned through 3 years of focused effort and strategic relationship building. But the timing sent a message that cut through all of Chloe's narrative manipulation. I'm not threatened by your success because I'm busy creating my own. I knew exactly what that announcement would do to their wedding day, and it exceeded my expectations. Within an hour, I had congratulations from several people who were supposed to be at the ceremony. This forced Chloe and Hunter to spend their wedding morning fielding questions about my professional achievement, instead of focusing on their perfect day. Zach, who attended the wedding, told me later that the pre-ceremony networking was tense as hell. Apparently, Chloe had a breakdown in the bridal suite, not from happiness, but from stress about whether people were going to spend the whole celebration talking about my success instead of theirs. Several guests had seen my LinkedIn post on their phones while getting ready, and were asking why the guy who just landed the biggest deal in Charlotte's logistics scene wasn't there to celebrate with them. The ceremony itself had weird energy. People kept asking where I was, especially the older business leaders who remembered Hunter and me as close partners in college and early career development. Chloe's family was asking her parents why Nolan wasn't there, forcing explanations about growing apart professionally that everyone recognized as damage control. But the reception was where my strategy really paid off. During the best man speech, Hunter's brother made some comment about the colleagues who've been with us through everything, and several people in the audience looked around confused because obviously I wasn't there, and I was the business partner everyone associated with Hunter's career advancement. Chloe broke down again during dinner when someone at her table mentioned they'd seen my promotion announcement and thought I was supposed to be there celebrating. She had to excuse herself to the bathroom, and Hunter had to follow her out, leaving their own reception to manage her anxiety about my absence and success. Here's the part that really drives home how compromised their situation was. Even at their own wedding, they couldn't tell the truth about what had happened between us. Paige heard from Chloe's sister that they spent part of the reception explaining to people that they'd grown apart from some old business associates and that sometimes people can't handle professional change. The best part came afterward. 3 different people who attended the wedding reached out to me within the week, colleagues I hadn't talked to in years, saying they finally understood why I'd cut professional contact and that they respected my business decision. One guy told me he'd lost respect for Hunter years ago, but never said anything because it wasn't his place to get involved in industry drama. My strategic absence gave them permission to acknowledge what they'd been thinking all along. The professional community had seen through Chloe and Hunter's narrative, but my success made it safe to express that judgment. 6 months later, I can report that things played out exactly as expected. Their marriage started rocky because their wedding highlighted their professional guilt instead of celebrating their partnership. When you spend your wedding day explaining why certain business associates aren't there, instead of focusing on the people who are, it sets a grim tone. Zach told me Hunter reached out a few months after the wedding, asking if I might be open to clearing the air now that they're married. Zach's response was perfect. Nolan's been clear professionally for 3 years. You're the ones who keep making it complicated. I never responded, and I won't. Not because I'm angry, but because I genuinely don't care about their marriage or their guilt or their need for professional validation. They made their choices. I made mine. The consequences played out exactly as they should have. Last month, I bought a bigger house in Myers Park. Started planning a future with Jesse, who understands the difference between professional loyalty and personal convenience. My career is exactly what I wanted it to be when I started rebuilding 3 years ago. When you build something on a compromised foundation, don't be surprised when structural problems emerge later. You can't renovate character flaws with a wedding ceremony, and some professional relationships can't be rebuilt once trust has been completely destroyed.